there are some really straightforward things about behavior change and what we have found in the research, in the science to be effective. Those things obviously increase our energy levels, improve our energy, optimize our energy. That's based on the knowledge of like Ayurveda and Vedic philosophy and stuff. So they kind of broke down the elements into
Hadlee Garrison is a behavior change specialist, Ayurveda expert, and certified health coach, helping people optimize their physiology, energy levels, and emotional resilience. With a lifelong interest in ancient healing modalities coupled with an evidence-based background in biopsychology and health behavior, with degrees from the University of Michigan, her passion is blending the cutting edge with the ancient for modern-day humans. Hadlee, welcome to the show. So great to have you here.
So happy to be here.
If there was one message that you would like our viewers and listeners to take away from this episode, what might it be?
I think that I want everyone to know that they are their own best guidance system. So what I do with people is I help them to kind of bring out what they already know inside of them. And really, you do know best for yourself. And there's no external expert or external plan or regimen or diet or whatever it is that is going to be perfect for you. So I really, really, really want to drive home that everyone knows what's going to actually be best for themselves. Sometimes we just have kind of lost it. And so I want to talk about that today. I want to talk about how to really come back to that intuition that you already have inside of you that we can kind of coax out.
So for those who haven't encountered your work yet, perhaps you could share a little bit about who you are, where you are, what you do.
Yeah. So I am Hadlee. I am a health coach. I help people optimize their energy levels and really come to a place where they are seated in themselves, really connecting with themselves. I have a background in behavior change, and a big piece of what I do, a lot of times people know about health. They know about the things that they, are quote unquote supposed to do, right? They know the things that make them feel better, but they're not necessarily doing them. And so that's kind of where I come in, is helping people actually implement these things in their life, implement and automate a lot of the things so that they can free up their mental capacity and their energy and all of the things for the rest of their passions. Because I think a lot of times people think that health is this thing that needs to be a full-time job. We need to be constantly thinking about, all of the things, or we need to just be like, not really thinking about health at all. And maybe we do like a couple things here and there.
This episode is brought to you by Start With Values. If you'd like to reduce stress and increase fulfillment in your work and life, then check out startwithvalues.com. There, you'll be able to download the Values app, which helps you to discover your core values and bring them to life through micro habits. There is a values course so that you can learn about the science and practice of core values, and you'll be able to pre-register for my forthcoming book called Start With Values. I hope that these tools will enable you to achieve more fulfillment and make more meaningful decisions on your journey of life. Now back to the episode.
But my mission and my goal in life is to help people to make health and their health habits really easeful and just a part of their life, so that they're freed up to do all of the exciting things that they're passionate about, that they feel purposeful in. So that's what I do. And I live in San Diego. I've been traveling around, living in lots of different places around the US, as well as Europe and a little bit in Mexico. But I'm now settled. I'm settled here in San Diego for the time being with my husband. So it's pretty great to be here.
Excellent, excellent. I love the idea of helping people close that gap. I know when I run workshops, uh, a real issue is that knowing doing gap. You can share a whole lot of information, but putting it into practice takes time and effort. So I love what you're doing in helping people to close that gap. Perhaps you could share a little bit about your background, because you've got quite an interesting background that's both academic in the Western sense and a strong interest in Eastern medicine.
Totally, yeah, and it makes me so excited to see how a lot of the Eastern. So I have a background in Ayurveda, which is it's an ancient Indian health science. For anyone who doesn't know, it basically means the science of life. So, like biology means the science of life in Latin, it's the science of life in Sanskrit, which is the ancient Indian language, just like Latin is an ancient language of like Europe, right? So I really got fascinated with Ayurveda while I was in college, while I was in undergrad. I was going to the University of Michigan. It was very, very Western. I have I have a couple degrees from University of Michigan, so that's very seated in the Western science side of things. And then my mom actually introduced me to Ayurveda, so that was pretty special. And I just became fascinated with it because it made so much sense to me. And now modern science is proving a lot of the things that even when I started learning about it, which was probably 8 years ago, even since then so many things have been now proven with modern science, lots of like things that have to do with the circadian rhythm and how our bodies are how our natural rhythms, the natural rhythms of our bodies, like kind of want to be, and how we've moved away from them in our current world. The other thing that fascinated me about Ayurveda is that there in Ayurveda there is no healthy for everyone. There is no like, this is good for everyone, this is bad for everyone. This is a healthy food, this is an unhealthy food. It's like there are foods that are going to be helpful for this particular person at this particular time. And I was like, that makes so much more sense than what we're learning in the Western medical model. And so that was what really inspired me and got me really interested in Ayurveda, was this model of we all have differences, and it's not just that we, a lot of times people are like, oh well, we're all different and so we don't actually know what's best for everyone. But Ayurveda is like, actually we can figure that out. There's this whole system of medicine that shows us, okay, if you have this imbalance going on, it likely means this thing, and you can actually balance it out with the opposite qualities in your food, in the things that you're doing. I can get more specific if you want, but generally, that was just so exciting to me. And I love bringing the modern science together with it now. And I love bringing my background in behavior change, because my undergrad was in biopsychology, went to grad school for public health, specifically learning about behavior change, health behaviors. And so now I love helping people actually implement what Ayurveda teaches, but in a way that has all of the behavior change science kind of backing it up to help people actually make it a part of their modern everyday life.
So interesting. It sounds like you really found your sweet spot at the intersection of these different fields. And
Yeah.
people would have previously, I think we are generally waking up to the fact that there is so much wisdom in these Eastern traditions. This is a science. It's been around for tens of thousands of years. Perhaps you could unpack some of the principles of Ayurveda.
I'll start with the definition of health in Ayurveda, which I love. I think it's just so cool. The word in Sanskrit for health in Ayurveda is svastha, and it translates to health, but it also translates to being seated in the self. And so I mentioned before, I help people to kind of become more seated in the self. And to break it down even more, it means the state of being in which mind body, mind, soul, and senses are in blissful equilibrium. So that was another piece too, that like, when I was learning about the definition of health, when I was in all of my classes, undergrad and grad classes, it was like, it's the absence of disease, or maybe the WHO like says that it's mind and body, which was like progressive at
Yeah.
that time. It was like
Yeah.
super progressive,
Yeah.
and like that mental health was part of it. And I just loved that it was like that in Ayurveda, it's the body, mind, soul, and senses are all in blissful equilibrium. And it's not that, you aren't sick. It's not that you're not sick physically or mentally. It's that like you are thriving. You're absolutely shining from the inside out. And so I think that also drew me in as well, because I do think we still have a little bit of that in our culture, where it's like, well, I have a problem, I want it to be solved immediately. One of my friends calls it a pill for an ill. Dr.
Mhm.
Kane, she's wonderful. Um, in Ayurveda, it's like, okay, let's get to actually what's going on, the root cause. And with Ayurveda, there are a lot of tools. So one of the things that people really, really get, fascinated by, especially when they're first learning about Ayurveda, is the doshas. And so that is basically mind body constitution. So everyone is born with a specific kind of, I look at it as like a piece of pie. So or a full pie, but we have like a proportion of each dosha in our pie. So I'll give you the three doshas. They are, well, let me actually break it down first with the elements, because I think that's the easiest way to understand the doshas. You maybe have heard of, like, maybe you've watched Avatar, The Last Airbender, that cartoon, the like kids cartoon, where they have like all the different elements, the five different elements. So that's based on the knowledge of like Ayurveda and Vedic philosophy and stuff. So they kind of broke down the elements into earth, water, fire, air, and space. So air and space are a little bit confusing because it sounds a little bit like the same thing, but air is kind of like a little bit more like wind, like the movement of air, and then space is more like ether, like thinking of like outer space, like it's just space without movement. Okay, so if we think of those five elements, then we can think of the doshas are made up of those five elements. So we have Kapha dosha, which is made up of earth and water. So those two things put together. So I'll ask you, Brad, what do you think of, like, what do you get when you put earth and water together?
When you put earth and water together, you get mud. I don't know if
Exactly.
yeah.
Yes. It's not a trick question. Like literally it's you get
Okay,
mud.
good.
Yeah. So you can think of it as if you yourself, or if you know someone who might tend to have like more mucus, more sticky, like when they go out of balance, when they get sick or whatever, it's like they have more mucusy things that are like kind of like mud.
Yeah.
They might also be like experience if they are, if they're going through a hard time or whatever, they might experience like feelings of being stuck in the mud. And that same person might tend toward both of those things. So if you have a lot of kapha in your constitution, that might be you. And when you have that combination of water and earth, you also might tend to, if you think of someone who has a lot of earth in their physiology, that's going to be someone that has more mass, right? Earth is a lot more dense than air,
Yes.
right? Someone who has a lot of air in their constitution is going to have just less mass, like just naturally. Um, and so, they might be like teeny, teeny, tiny, or they might be tall and lanky. That might be someone with more air and space in their constitution. And so that's going to be Vata. So someone
Mm.
that has a lot of air and space, Vata. Someone who has a lot of earth and water, Kapha, and then someone who has a lot of fire in their constitution is Pitta.
Yeah.
And that is going to be someone who might have, when they're out of balance, they might have a lot more fiery symptoms, right? So things like redness on the skin, rashes, acne, anything that's red, basically.
Mm.
Burning, any sort of burning sensations, inflammation, all of that is Pitta. And I will say also, like, anyone can go out of balance with any of the doshas. So it
Sure.
doesn't have to be a person that, like, I am a Pitta and therefore I only have Pitta imbalances. Like,
Yeah.
my most prominent constitution is Pitta. I have
Yeah.
gone out of balance in all of them.
Yes.
so so that's Pitta. They might be the type of person who has more ambition, is more type A, very goal oriented, very focused, wants to get stuff done. Really sharp, like sharp as in like witty and quick, but also sharp as in like can be really sharp with people. And so they have to, be a little bit more. The medicine for Pitta is to soften because we can, get angry, irritated, that kind of thing quickly.
Mhm.
And then so Vata is the one that has the air and ether. And I'll just give a brief description of that. But someone who has a lot of air and ether might go out of balance with if you've probably heard someone be called like spacey or an airhead, that kind of thing, where they forget things, or they're forgetful, or maybe they're super exuberant and they're like just kind of all over the place, right? That's like a lot of air in your
Yes.
constitution. So I love it because it like makes a lot of sense. It's like, oh yeah, fire, like that makes sense that it would be inflammation, burning, redness.
Yeah.
That totally makes sense. Air, it's like, yeah, I get that. Like totally. They might physically, when they're out of balance, they might feel weak, fatigued, have like insomnia, anxiety, that kind of thing, because they don't have as much mass grounding them down, essentially.
Mm.
Um, and so yeah, so it's really helpful. It's a really helpful um, model to be able to look at, because then you can see, oh, okay, so I'm experiencing, let's go with a Pitta imbalance. I'm experiencing a bunch of inflammation. I'm
Mm.
experiencing rashes. I'm experiencing a lot of irritability, just unexplained anger. And it might not be that there's something to actually be angry about. It might just be that your Pitta is out of whack. And so what we
Mm.
can do is, okay, there are foods that we can eat that are going to specifically help with cooling that fire down. There are things that we can do, specific practices that we can have to cool the fire down. There are specific like types of exercise that we can do to cool the fire down. So I find that it's really, really helpful. Not just as like, oh, you're a kapha, here, follow this kapha diet. That's not what I teach. That is what sometimes people fall into when they start learning about Ayurveda. So I want to be very clear that that's not what it is.
Yes.
But when we're feeling an imbalance, then we can lean into, oh, okay, these are the foods that are going to help me. These are the foods that are probably going to make it worse. And that's how I find is the most helpful for people leaning into like intuitive eating, because a lot of times I've worked with a lot of people who have been burned by intuitive eating because they're like, well, I tried intuitive eating. I just ate whatever I wanted and then I felt like crap. And I'm like,
Mm.
yeah, that's not exactly how
Yeah.
it works.
Yeah. I'd like to hear more about what intuitive eating actually is, because that sounds fascinating.
Oh
Mm.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
Um, yeah, intuitive eating, something that I also studied a lot while I was in grad school, and it's because I struggled with it so much myself, was our relationship with food and our relationship with our bodies, especially women, but it also happens with men as well. And I've worked with a number of men who I think it's just permeated our culture and our society that there is this there is good and bad and right and wrong when it comes to food, and we must follow these things. And we also tend to prioritize how a person's body looks over how they actually feel. And I don't want to say that, like, I think I think sometimes we go in the opposite direction and we say, like, you're not allowed to care what you look like. And like, you are allowed to, like, you're allowed to
Cool.
want whatever you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're allowed to care what you look like if you want to care what you look like. I'm just saying, let's like prioritize how you actually feel.
Yeah.
And usually what happens with my clients is they'll come in, a lot of them will want to like lose weight or whatever. And they'll come in, and by the end, they'll be like, oh, yeah, well, I lost 60 pounds, but like, I don't actually care about that anymore. Like, they'll just kind of say it like off the cuff. And I'm like, oh, they're like, oh, yeah, but like, that's not, I don't really care about that anymore. So, so I think coming
Mm.
to that place, one of the things that I studied in grad school was how we have this obesity epidemic.
Yeah.
We're doing more now than we ever have to try to address that, to try to educate on that. But what we are doing is not effective, because what we're doing is we are teaching kids and adults that there are good foods and bad foods, and you should eat this and you shouldn't eat that. And, you know, and that's basically all across the board. That's what we're doing. When instead, what we could be doing is actually teaching people how to tune into their body and what their bodies are actually communicating with them. So, if they are feeling uncomfortable, I was I was a kid who was so disconnected from my body. Like, I didn't even know when I was hungry, when I was full, because I was just raised, with, you're supposed to eat this, not that. Like, just, ignore what your body is
Mm.
telling you, because mind over matter matters. Mind over matter is the best thing that you can do. You need to train your body to be better, essentially, when really our bodies are like the wisdom holders. Our bodies are like telling us what's going on, what's wrong. And when we can address them, and when we can address them in the moment, then life just kind of like bursts open, and we become so much more excited about
Mm.
everything in life.
That's so interesting. Intuitive eating. Now, I guess it's a skill that you would develop. You can't just, because if you've been eating junk food for a while, well, based on multiple factors, your microbiome, etc., you probably are going to crave sugar
Crave.
if you just cut it out.
Exactly.
So it's a
Exactly.
step-by-step process to get to a point where you can actually trust your intuition in terms of what you eat.
Yes, exactly. That was so beautifully said. I think that's where people get mixed up with
Mm.
with intuitive eating. They're like, "Oh, well, I'm just going to eat whatever I'm craving." But what happens is, yeah, so in Ayurveda, there's a concept of being able to discern this for yourself. It's basically, the concept is like increases like. So like things that are like each other will increase. So if we are out of balance in a certain dosha, sometimes there's multiple doshas, sometimes you're out of balance in all of them. And maybe you have like anxiety, and you are um, gaining weight, which is more kapha. The anxiety would be more vata, though some of the other ones play into anxiety, because anxiety is just complicated. And then you also have a bunch of inflammation and anger and irritation, right? Like, you can have all of them for sure, and I have before.
Mm.
um, but we kind of target the one that's like the most prominent, like what's the biggest the
Yes.
biggest thing going on right now, and then we can address the other ones as we go. But what I was going to say about that is, this concept of like increases like is that if we are out of balance in one of them, we we will crave things that make us go further out of balance. So, if we're
Yes.
which is a bummer.
Yes, and it's so true.
But when we're in balance, we will crave things that bring us further into balance. So that's the good news. Is
Yes.
once we're in balance with the doshas, we will crave things that keep us in balance. And then, something's going to happen that's going to throw us out of balance, because that's what life is. You're never going to be like perfectly balanced. I always like to look at balance as like more of a dance than like a specific, like you have to have it in like a seesaw, like
Yeah.
perfectly straight across. Like that's not really what balance is. It's more of a fluidity of
Yes.
being able to respond to whatever's happening in your environment, in your body, what you've just gone through in your life, what stage of life you're in, all of the different factors that make the human experience so rich. But the cool thing is, yeah, when we are in balance, we are going to crave things that keep us in balance. When we're out of balance, we will crave things that bring us further out of balance. But knowing this is super empowering, because it's like, oh, okay, I've been eating these things that aren't making me feel good. I'm craving more of those things, even though I know that they're not making me feel good. But just knowing that it's because of the momentum that I have going in that direction, that makes it a lot easier, rather than being like, I'm so bad, I'm so bad, I'm so bad, I shouldn't be eating this, I'm going to eat it anyway because I'm craving it so much. And how we kind of just spiral in that
Mm.
direction. We can be like, oh, okay, so if I want to feel this way instead of how I feel right now, this out of balance way that I'm feeling right now, if I want to feel the other way, I can do the opposite quality. So if I've got a lot of kapha going on, if I feel sticky and heavy and muddy, right? Because kapha has the mud factor. If I'm feeling that way, what do I need to do to actually bring myself into balance? So without even getting into like specific foods, like here are the
Mm.
foods that
Mm.
you're going to eat. It's like you can ask yourself, what kinds of foods would help me if I were feeling really sticky, icky, sticky, stuck in the mud, that kind of thing. What kinds of foods are going to help? It's going to be the foods. Well, I'll ask you, Brad. what
Oh.
qualities, what
Mm.
qualities would balance that out?
So if I'm feeling really muddy,
Mm-hmm.
let's think. Well, you want to go for lightness for sure.
Yeah.
So I'm imagining more fresh fruits, vegetables, things
Mhm.
like that. Not the heavy foods, not
Mhm.
heavy proteins potentially.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, we want to bring in the light
Mm.
quality. And I always think too about, like, when you think about the life cycle of a plant,
Yeah.
we can look at a plant and see, okay, the kinds of foods that are going to be light are the ones that are aerial parts of the plant, right? It's going to be leaves, flowers, stalks, or stems. It's the stuff that's above the ground. It's the stuff
Mm.
that's the lightest part of the plant.
Yes.
The parts of the plant that are going to be the most um, grounding. So those are going to be helpful if you've got a vata. If you're like super out of balance with your vata, you're maybe losing too much weight, or you are really uh, feeling really weak, that kind of thing. These are all vata symptoms. Maybe you're having insomnia, that kind of thing. The grounding foods are going to be the foods that are literally under or on the ground, right? So under the ground are going to be the roots. On the ground are going to be things like squashes, things that are sitting on the ground. All of those things are going to be grounding for the air and the ether. So that's the really cool thing, is like all of this stuff gets to just be
Mm.
easy. Like it's like, oh, right. All it is. It just makes a lot of sense with like nature and the nature of our
Mhm.
bodies. And oh, the other grounding thing is seeds. And so when we're thinking about like um, seeds and so like legumes, grains, but also like um, wheat and things that are made into like bread and that kind of, all those are seeds. And so those are going to all be heavier things. Those are all going to be things that are imbalancing for kapha, but they might be balancing for vata. So again, nothing is bad, nothing is good. It's just what does your body need right now?
Mm.
If that makes sense.
It's like it's ancient precision medicine, really. It's helping
Yeah.
you to deal with whatever external and internal challenges you're having, and to find that dance, that balance. As a Pitta, and I went for an Ayurvedic massage probably about 6 months ago, and she said, "Oh, you're definitely Pitta," and and I do. When I thought I had allergies, right? And I tried elimination and all that stuff because I'd get these rashes, particularly on my forehead, on my neck. It turns out that it's very much related to stress, high cortisol, high adrenaline. And I've figured out that I've never really figured out a way of calming it through diet, but I know that just taking
Mm-hmm.
time out, calming the mind, meditation, time in nature, the, I can resolve those issues within a day or two now, whereas it used to be steroid creams and crazy stuff, which I will never go back to. But I
I
figured
had the
that out.
same
But
exact thing.
for
Yep.
for us as Peters, what's a counterbalance? Is it foods like celery, or I mean, what cools us down?
Yeah, yeah. You're on the right track for sure. I
Oh,
mean,
good
I
combo.
definitely had the same thing. I had psoriasis all over my
Yeah.
body, all over, like I had it around my eyes
Yes.
and uh
Same.
and oh my gosh, and I had the prescribed
Uh,
cortisol or
yeah.
cortisone cream and
It's
all
terrible.
the steroids. Awful, terrible, terrible. I'm so glad that I didn't use them for that long, because I started learning more about Ayurveda. And I think that especially the ones
Yeah.
around my eyes, I think that it impacted my eyesight. It actually worsened my eyesight after using those for a
Yeah.
period of time.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other cool thing about Ayurveda that you mentioned is like, okay, Ayurveda has known forever that our minds and our bodies are inextricably connected. There's no like concept of them being separate, right?
Exactly.
It's laughable, right?
Yeah.
It's and that's why the doshas are like they're your mind body constitution. Like it's what's going on in your mind and your body, and you find a lot of times it's similar. So when you have stress,
Mhm.
high stress, that's going to cause the rashes and the
Yeah.
um the inflammation, all of that stuff. But yes, food wise, uh the kinds of things that are going to be helpful for pitta are cooling foods, right? So we've
Yes.
got too much fire. We want to cool down the fire. I always think of it as like cooling and soothing. Things like fruits and vegetables that have a ton of water in them, right? Water is cooling for fire, right? Cools it down.
Mhm.
Um, the classics like watermelon and cucumber and
Yeah.
that kind of thing are obviously have like a lot of water in them. And so those can be cooling. But obviously, we're not going to be eating watermelon in the dead of winter either. And Ayurveda would not advise that, even if you have a lot of pitta in your constitution, because it's just not seasonally appropriate. It's just like, and it would
Yes.
taste terrible too
Exactly.
to have watermelon in the winter.
Yeah.
So there are also like spices and herbs and different things that are cooling that we can use all year round as well. There also different like proteins are can be cooling or heating. So what kind of meat would you think would be the most heating meat?
Most heating.
So
Well,
everyone
I
at home think of
imagine,
this too.
mm, I imagine that beef would be more heating than, say, chicken or fish.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm.
So this is why I like to ask these questions of
Mm.
people because it's like this
No.
stuff. Like you already know.
You're unlocking it.
So
Yeah.
yeah, right. So,
Yeah.
and that's why it's intuitive eating, because it's literally like it's in there. It's in there already. You already know this stuff. You just need a little bit of like helping
Mm,
coax it out, essentially. So yeah, so red meat is definitely going to be more heating, whereas chicken, poultry, turkey,
mm.
fish, white fish, that kind of thing is going to be more cooling. You can even see it in the color, right?
Yeah, you can
The
see it.
red meat is
Mhm.
more heating, and then the other meats are going to be more, are like white, essentially. And
Mm.
even like the darker meat of chicken and turkey are a little bit more heating than the white meats, which just makes intuitive sense.
Yeah.
Same with like, legumes and grains and stuff like that. If you eat more vegetarian, those things are going to be more cooling. Those are pacifying for pitta. They're also helpful for kapha because they are astringent. And so the astringent nature of them is that they will take water out of your body rather than having you like retain water.
Mhm.
Astringent foods are going to help to kind of like suck up that excess water, which happens with kaphas because they have a lot of water in their constitution, right? So, or if you just have a kapha imbalance, I want to make sure that everyone is very clear that it's not just like this happens for one person. It's
Yep.
if you have that imbalance. Because I think people get really obsessed with that. They're like, oh,
Mhm.
I'm a pitta, I'm a pitta, I'm a pitta. Um, I used to think that I was a kapha. I had a kapha imbalance for like a long time as a kid. And I
Okay.
thought that I had a kapha constitution. And so I would do all of these things to try to balance my kapha, but it would make my pitta just go nuts. So, and then I would have the psoriasis and all of the things. And like,
Mm.
that is not what I want for people.
Mm. If someone's
Yeah.
interested in finding out which dosha they are tending towards
Yeah.
and how to rebalance, who should they see? What would you search for?
Yeah. So I have a quiz. So if you want to take the quiz, I designed it to be as helpful as, so I've taken lots of different dosha quizzes online, and sometimes they will skew toward one dosha or another. And I really tried to make this like very, even if you have, so sometimes the dosha quizzes will skew toward kapha, especially because a lot of times, especially women have a like dysmorphic view of themselves and their bodies. And because kapha tends to have the bigger body size, the quiz results will skew you toward kapha because you think of yourself as bigger than you are. So I really made this quiz to kind of mitigate for all of those biases that tend to be in the quizzes.
Okay.
So there's that. um
Excellent.
I mean, so I also made the quiz to give you your most prominent dosha instead of telling you you are a pitta or you are a kapha. That's become something that is common in the West now, is that we say like,
Mm.
oh, I'm a pitta, I'm a vata, I'm a kapha. In India, if you were to say that, they would be really confused because everyone has all of the doshas, and no, you're not one dosha. Like you have all of these elements, therefore all of the doshas within you. And so really the most important thing is what is the most prominent one right now, because what's maybe the most out of balance, or what can we help to mitigate, because that's really what matters. It doesn't really matter what you were born with, except for that you might go out of balance with one of them a little bit easier. It matters more what's going on for you right now. Let's get that into balance, and then like you're good. You don't have to be obsessing about what's my original
Mhm.
dosha constitution, if that makes sense.
It makes sense. It's kind of like bringing you back to the present moment, which is what meditation's all about for your mind. Like, let's see
Yeah.
where you are right now, and then help you in this moment. Fascinating. I will
Yeah.
definitely link to that quiz in the show notes so that people can check it out. Definitely worth pursuing. I'll find out more for myself because while I actually spent a year in India, believe it or not, I didn't go too deep into
Oh,
Ayurveda or anything like that. I was focused on surfing down the coast of India and going on adventures.
wow.
But, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely time. So that really resonated what you said about Pitta and the skin conditions and so forth. But I'd love to hear your perspectives on behavior change and particularly some strategies for sustainable change. Because as we said at the beginning, well, I read that 80% of New Year's resolutions have been dropped by the 1st of February. 96% of diets don't work. You'll know better than me. Why is it so hard, and what are some tips?
It's really interesting. It's multifaceted, but at the same time, there are some really straightforward things about behavior change and what we have found in the research, in the science, to be effective. So a lot of times what we do, especially if you have a lot of pitta in your constitution, is we will do things in a very all or nothing fashion.
Yeah. This is true. Yeah.
Raise your hand if you feel called out.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So we'll tend toward perfectionism, and we'll tend toward all or nothing. So it's like I mean, if I'm not going to do it right, then why would I even do it? Right?
I
Like
say
that
that all the
is
time.
the most
Yep.
it's like the motto of Pitta. Yeah. So I've been there. And that's actually why I wanted to study behavior change, because I was like, I know so much. Like I was the friend that all of my friends came to, like with health stuff, like, oh, like should I be eating this or this? What should I do to exercise? All of the things, meditation, they would ask me about that. I dabbled in everything, but couldn't create I couldn't create a lifestyle around it. I couldn't create habits around it. And I would think that I created a habit around it, but then I would fall off the wagon. It was like a
Mhm.
constant trying, and then once I didn't do it quote unquote right, it was like, okay, well, I ruined it. I might as well. I'm going to start tomorrow, or I'm going to start on Monday, or I'll start in the new year, or I'll start, pick whatever random date. I did it so many times. I would do it like once the school year ends, once the school year starts, once, this milestone happens, just arbitrarily. And so I see this pattern happening all the time with people, is they're either focusing on their health, going back to what I was saying at the beginning, is like they're either focusing on their health and they think that they need to be focusing on their health like at all times, or they're not thinking about it at all. And maybe they're feeling a little guilty about it, but like, they're doing whatever,
Mhm.
whatever else. And they're like, I'll start it. I'll start it later. And so I learned about how that is, I mean, incredibly ineffective. And also, I think that there's this misunderstanding in the health and wellness and fitness industry. People are really obsessed with the word discipline right now.
Mhm.
And they're like, you just have to have discipline. It's not about motivation, it's about discipline. And that is definitely true. It is not about motivation, because motivation ebbs and flows. You can't
Yeah.
rely on motivation to do things. So like, I'm glad we've gotten here. But we can
Mhm.
take it even a step further, because discipline also requires a level of willpower. So I like to take, and we need that when we're starting to put a habit into place. But what I help my clients do is get to automation. So it's not discipline because they're not thinking about it anymore. They're not like thinking, should I work out this morning? What am I going to do? Am I going to nourish myself today? Or am I going to,
Mhm.
make choices that are going to make me feel worse today? It's not really a question. And with discipline, it still is, there's still like a hint of, I got to make this choice every single day. With automation, there's not a choice anymore.
Yeah.
Not to say that it's like, you can't change your mind. And there's also flexibility within that. So, exercise is a really good example
Yeah.
because it's pretty straightforward. So, with exercise, for me, there's not a question in my mind whether I'm going to exercise in the morning. But I get to decide in the morning what type of exercise I'm going to do. So, based on how I'm feeling in my body, again, it comes back to that intuitive, like, I do a lot of weightlifting. I love high intensity stuff. Have a lot of pizza in my
Mhm.
constitution. And I love that stuff. And this morning I did like a just slow, easy yoga session. It wasn't that I was like just gonna not do anything at all. And to be clear, like there are days that I don't do things, but usually it's because I decide specifically not to or whatever.
Yeah.
But like what I do is, oh, okay, this is what my body's actually needing this morning. So I'm going to do that for my body. So it's a little bit of intuition with that automation. It's on autopilot. It's just like a thing. And I also want to say that like I used to hate working out. So even if you're listening to this and you're like, okay, well, that's easy for you to say. You've probably always enjoyed working out, and this is just like a thing. Like, I loathed it. I used to absolutely hate working out.
Mm.
I would force myself to do it with discipline and willpower, but then I would fall off the wagon because
Yeah.
I was relying on that rather than the automation. And what we do to get to automation is we have to break it down, like way, way, way down. So James Clear talks about this in Atomic Habits,
Yep.
where we have to get to a place where, or we get to a place because this is what works. It's actually beautiful, where the goal is not, I'll just keep going with the workout example because it's an easy
Mm.
one. The goal is not to exercise, like to do this one time workout. It's not to like go to the gym and work super super hard, force yourself to do a bunch of things that you don't like to do, and then like that's not the goal. Is not that one time workout. The goal is to become the kind of person who works out every day.
Mhm.
Then we build on that. So I always talk about with my clients, like, how can you make it so that even something that you don't think of as counting, so like maybe you do like 20 jumping jacks in the morning and you wouldn't necessarily count that as a workout beforehand. Can you count that as a workout so that that can become your habit? That's, you are becoming the kind of person who moves their body every single morning rather than it needing to be like this really intense, hard, forceful thing. Then you can build on that. Okay, so the other thing is there's a book called Elastic Habits. And the concept of that is that we can set a goal for, maybe I want to go to the gym, you know, and I really, my goal is to have like an hour long workout in the gym. But it still is going to count if I do those 20 jumping jacks. And then maybe my over the top workout goal is going to be the hour long workout in the gym, and maybe the like halfway between is I can do a workout at home, a 20-minute workout at home. Maybe that's the in between. And so the Elastic Habits is essentially, okay, I am, any of these count, and I'm going between them. I can choose between which ones are going to work for me today, but that just
Nice.
makes it become part of your life.
I haven't heard of Elastic Habits, but I love that. And I'm a huge
Yeah.
fan of the atomic habits or micro habits approach, because
Yeah.
you attach, you create that identity. I'm a fit person. And I know from personal experience, exercise is just so embedded in my routine and I love it. I look forward. In fact, it's my
Yeah.
favorite part of the day now. It's without it,
Same.
I feel lost. I feel lost. Like
Yeah.
something's really missing. And that's where people can get to. It's really achievable.
Totally. Yeah, I've had so many clients who come in and they're like, "Yeah, I don't know that I'm going to get to a place where I actually like working out." And literally by the end, they're like, "I cannot believe what did you do? I love it." Like it's just
Yeah.
such a
I
big
mean,
change.
I go to a Bikram yoga class every Wednesday purely because they only have it once a week. There used to be a studio and it closed down. And I remember when I first walked into a studio, a Bikram studio, because I've done yoga for a long time. I was thinking, this is torture. Who puts themselves through this? It's so horrible. And now I get there and I'm so excited. I'm looking forward to it, going, I'm about
Mhm.
to torture myself. But Peter, hot yoga. And
I know,
yeah,
yeah.
and yet I love the intensity of it. I'm gradually upscaling how far I run up this crazy mountain. But I
Mhm.
do, and something I've learned to do, and I'm sure you teach this as well, is to balance all of that performance with recovery. So making sure
Yeah.
at lunchtime I'll go and lie down outside and not feel guilty and just enjoy some
Mm.
time breathing. And this seems to create a level of balance and recovery that helps you sustain that. Mm,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, we have to balance that out. Just like, I mean, with the doshas, it's like if you are doing a hot yoga class, especially if you have a pitta constitution, you got to cool yourself down then. You've got to like, okay, now I'm going to balance that out. Nature is an amazing, I mean, nature is the balancer equalizer for all of the doshas. Pitta because it's cooling and soothing, and also it makes it so that a lot of times pittas will get really myopic, really hyper focused on their computer, like physically, or just like focused on a problem, focused on
yeah.
a thing that they're trying to solve, that kind of thing. Nature, it just opens up the aperture. It literally, the horizon, you can see the horizon, and so it actually makes it so that you open your mind more. For kapha, it's helpful because especially if you're moving around in nature and if you're getting like more oxygenated, that's helpful for lightening things up. If you're in a stale room, that's going to make things heavier. And kapha is the earth and water mud one. And then for vata, nature is wonderful because it's grounding. It's really grounding. And so, especially if you lie on the ground.
Mm,
um, and I love that you said that you go and lie on the ground. I do that a lot. I'll even do it in my apartment. I'll just lie on the ground, like sprawled, especially in
yeah.
the summertime, like sprawled like a starfish. And it's
Mhm.
really cooling for the body. So it's great
Yeah.
for pittas to just cool down.
Mm. Something I saw on your website was mention of morning routines. Yeah. And I know that
Mm.
it's a bit of a cliche now. I joke about it in workshops. I'm like, who wants to hear my morning routine? But everyone's fascinated with it because it
Yeah.
is something that we can insert at the start of the day before things get chaotic, and it can give you a sense of momentum, and it's obviously got all of these benefits depending on what you do. But what are your thoughts on morning routines?
I am a huge fan. It's so funny. Like morning routines are that's the YouTube video that I have that has the most views is my morning routine one.
Is it really?
It's so funny. Yeah, it's so funny how fascinated people are with it. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to do one.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it's interesting. I think there's like maybe a little bit more hype on the morning routine than there needs to be, but I'm a really big fan of having something for yourself. And I think that it can be different for everyone. A lot of times people have morning routines that are really prescriptive, right? They're like, you have to do this morning routine and your day will be amazing, right? and I'm like, okay, well, there's no this is the best for everyone in Ayurveda at all. Like, so
Mm.
the same goes with the morning routine. What's actually going to work for you? Now, I do think that there are some things that can be helpful for everyone. So I always start talking about the night before more than the morning routine. Uh, I find that a lot of times people are like, morning routine. Okay, I got to get up early now and I got to do, this, and this. But they don't actually set themselves up the night before for success. And then they're just exhausted because they haven't actually gotten the amount of sleep that they needed the night before.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's more important that you get the sleep that you need than that you get your morning routine in, to be very
Oh,
clear. Like,
100%.
you
Mm.
need sleep.
Yeah.
So I start with the night before and, setting yourself up for the type of sleep quality that you want to have. And also starting with like, kind of like a bedtime routine. I don't want to say that it's a bedtime routine because people might think that it's like this whole big massive
Mhm.
thing that you have to do. Oh, now I have to do a bedtime routine and a morning routine? Like, what? But we all have a bedtime routine
Yeah.
already. We brush our teeth,
Mhm.
like I mean, wash your face, maybe
Mhm.
do like some skincare, whatever it might be. Everyone has something.
Mm.
Hopefully you brush your teeth. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, at
You
least
go to
that.
bed. Yeah. Hopefully there's some steps before that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We
Mm.
all have an evening routine. It's just kind of optimizing it so that when you wake up in the morning, it makes it so easy.
Mhm.
I think it's James Clear that says like so easy you can't say no. I think it's him that says that. I'm not sure, but make it so easy that you can't say no. The other thing about habit automation is that versus discipline is that automation utilizes architecting your environment to make it way easier on yourself. So the example that I'm going to give you with a morning routine is one super simple thing that everyone can start doing right now that's going to change your life. Like, if you don't already do this, it will actually change your life. Just doing this for 1 year I've talked to people who have done it because they watched my morning routine video and they've actually been like, it's changed so much in my life. Is keeping your phone outside of your bedroom. And you do that the night before. You go and you plug it in. I have my little charging station outside of my bedroom. And so I go and I put it there. So I'm not going to bed scrolling. And then I'm not waking up scrolling. I don't have my phone charger in my room to begin with. It's always out here. So it's completely automated. I wouldn't ever think to keep my phone in my bedroom. A lot of times, what happens is people will start the morning with the day before they'll have high hopes for the next morning with a morning routine. They're like, yes, we're going to do this. It's going to be great. But they don't set themselves up for success the night before. So they wake up groggy and foggy and feeling crappy. And there are there are a number of things that you can do the day before that are going to set you up to be able to have the kind of quality of sleep and all of that. But then that you wake up in the morning and then you start scrolling on your phone, and that's going to it's going to make it so that you have less time to do the morning routine, and then also you kind of get your mind into this state of like phone state, which is a totally different state than like expansive, the kind of like creative morning routine that most people want to have, right? So that is a huge game changer. Now, I also think that it's really helpful to have a couple of other like practices. But again, like exercise, you get to decide, okay, so I'm going to exercise this morning, but what is it that my body actually wants? Or what is it that my mind actually wants? So, like, if you're feeling really maybe you're feeling really anxious in the morning. Sometimes people wake up with anxiety because their cortisol goes up, but it goes up too much and they feel anxiety, morning anxiety. So, doing some nervous system regulation practices that are like body based and that kind of thing, and having that be like your practice. Sometimes people are like, meditation, you have to meditate in this one certain way. You have to do this every morning. And if you don't do it, then wow, wow, wow. So, like, if you need grounding, you do grounding practices. If you are feeling really like heavy and lethargic and groggy, first make sure that you're getting the amount of sleep that you need. But
Yeah.
second, if you're feeling that way, then if you've already gotten the amount of sleep that you need and then you're feeling that way, then you might have more of a kapha imbalance going on and you need something that's more invigorating. So for a meditation, you could do a guided meditation that's like very inspiring, or you could do some sort of like invigorating breathwork practices. There's like breath of fire, if you've heard of that, where you're like basically like hyperventilating essentially, and it brings your energy up. And so you can do, so again, it's tailoring it to what your
Mm.
needs actually are.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. And as with exercise, my morning routine started off as an experiment. And this is
Yes.
what we want with change is that I love it. Again, and when I'm traveling and I'm staying in a hotel somewhere where I can't go and stand on the grass outside, well, you probably could, but in some places people would look at you a bit funny, but not that I care. But, I actually miss my morning routine now. It really seems to
Yeah.
set me up, but I do have that one problem, which is the scrolling, because I feel like, oh, what if there's an emergency overnight and I need to phone someone? It's never happened, right? Get rid of that thing from the bedroom.
Right?
Mm,
Literally
yeah,
not once has it ever
never.
happened.
No. Yeah, exactly, exactly.
My question is, yeah, has that ever happened before? Is that really necessary? Like, we didn't ever have that before, like when we were, like a few years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Phone in the bedroom a few years ago, right?
Mm,
The other thing that people sometimes are like worried about is, what if someone needs to call me? Unless you have children, like unless you have children who are like out at night, like teenagers
yeah.
or whatever,
Mm,
you can probably deal with it in the morning, right? Like you can deal with the thing
yeah.
that people are calling about in the morning.
Mm,
And then you'll be more equipped to handle whatever emergency they called with, because you will have slept well enough and
yeah.
you have resilience for the day.
Oh, I agree. It's like checking your emails last thing before bed. I say to people in my workshops, have you ever received an email in those last 30 minutes before bed that helps you to sleep better? That you go, yes, I'm so glad I checked this. It doesn't happen. I don't think I've ever received like incredible news at 10:30 p.m.
I love
Don't
that.
do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Uh,
It's so true. It's so
yeah.
true. Yeah.
So
Yeah, so that's a good life hack, keeping your
it
phone
is
up
a good
there.
life hack. And I know we're running out of time, but I wanted to just get your perspective quickly on energy management versus time management.
Ooh, yeah, this is my favorite thing. Along with the obsession with discipline, our society tends to have a crazy obsession. Like, it is, people ask me about this maybe more than anything else, is like, how do I manage my time better? I need more time management, especially as someone who has, expertise in behavior change, right? It's like, how do I manage my time better? And I have come to the realization that people don't need better time management. Um, People need better energy management. And what I mean by that is, it takes, different tasks that take the same amount of time do not take the same amount of energy. So if you are, let's say you have a really uh, busy work day, but you're doing a bunch of stuff that you actually really love, that lights your soul on fire, that you are just super super passionate about, you're going to come home at the end of the day and you're probably going to do something that's like healthy for you, that like
Mhm.
feels good in your body. If you are doing a bunch of stuff that you absolutely hate all day long, and maybe you are forcing yourself to also like run in the morning when you hate running. I always like, people are always like, are you going to make me run? And I'm like, I don't like running either. I work out in all other
Yeah.
ways other than running. It's okay. You don't have to run. So maybe you're doing things that you're forcing yourself to do that you hate doing. You, that creates decision fatigue and just fatigue in general, because you are depleting that energy throughout the day. And then you're going to go home and maybe you're going to plop on the couch, binge watch Netflix for 4 hours, maybe eat a pint of Ben and Jerry's, whatever. That's like the classic thing that people talk about, and go to bed way later than you intended to, because you just like kept watching Netflix because it kept saying, do you want to keep watching? And you just kept clicking yes to keep watching.
Yeah.
Right. Or maybe it doesn't even ask you that and it just keeps playing it over and over again, because that's the momentum that's happening. And so when we can actually manage our energy, that's when like alignment and feeling like we are in integrity with our values and our bodies and our lives. A lot of times when we're doing a bunch of stuff that doesn't feel good, we feel out of integrity. And it feel I always say that it feels like, the word is like icky, just feels like ick.
Yes.
And so when we can actually manage our energy, that makes it so that we make choices. Again, it goes back to what I was talking about with Ayurveda. It's okay, like increases like. So when I'm not managing my energy, I crave things that actually deplete my energy even more. And then when I am, in alignment with my energy, then I'm going to crave things that keep me in that cycle of feeling energized and like, ooh, maybe I'll do some journaling tonight and journal through some like limiting beliefs, and maybe journal about like the potentiality of this next month and like all of the exciting things that could happen, and that builds more momentum for that energy, rather than the other scenario where we plop down on the couch, which then depletes our energy even more. The following day, we are going to be dead tired, because not and it's not just because we watched the TV too long and ate the things that didn't actually feel good and did all of those things, but it's also because the day before we did a bunch of stuff that really depleted our energy. So it all led up
Mhm.
to that, and it all compounds on itself. So obviously the habits that I coach my clients in, which are, based on Ayurveda and also proven by modern science, all of that good stuff, those things obviously increase our energy levels, improve our energy, optimize our energy. And then we can tweak it even more. Then we can refine it even more, so that, okay, what am I doing at work that's draining my energy right now? Okay, so maybe that's something that I could automate, or maybe that's something that I could delegate to someone else whose energy it might not drain if they're doing it, right? Like, because we all have different skills, we all have different things that we like my husband is a software engineer, and I watch him, like he's like coding on his computer and it's all these letters and numbers. It's like so insane. I'm like, that would drain my energy to try to do that. But for
Mhm.
him, it's invigorating. And so sometimes I think we don't want to delegate because we don't want to like give the bad task to
Mhm.
someone else, but like it might not actually be a bad task to someone else. So we can automate. So, whether that's like a digital automation or using some sort of software when we're at work, or if it's the physical world where the automation is that I have my phone charger outside of my bedroom at all times. That's a real world automation. So I don't have to think about charging my like plugging my phone in outside of my bedroom. Um, when we can automate things, that frees up a ton of energy. We can delegate things. We can ask for support from family, friends, uh, colleagues, whoever it might be. And all of these things help to optimize our energy over and over. And then the other thing is, like, once we have the habits down and we start to kind of refine that, we have so much more capacity, and we don't even have to think about the time management. Like, we don't have to block out, oh, I have to do this in this time and this and this time and this and this time, because, oh my gosh, how many times did I write down exactly what I was going to do throughout the entire day the night before? I journaled it out. And I didn't do that stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I would do part of it, and then I would completely fall off of it because I wasn't
Mhm.
actually managing my energy with it. So I was
Yes.
depleting myself. So I get really
Um,
passionate about that.
it's great. It's great. I tried this tool about 3 months ago. It's an AI tool that manages your calendar and manages your time. And it seemed like a good idea because it would just automatically take my to-do list and just fill up each day and work around meetings. But it really did not work for me because it didn't align
Yes.
with my energy, these peaks and troughs of
Mhm.
energy and alertness and, you know,
Yeah.
things that light me up. Because if I'm working on something I enjoy, wow, I can get into flow state and just, be. In fact, the most impactful things I've ever done have been in sprints, bursts of passionate energy. And an AI tool just can't plan your day for you like a jigsaw puzzle. And well, the thing is, you're not going to feel like a lot of that stuff at the times that it's been assigned. It just didn't work. So I love your approach. I love it so much.
Yeah, and it's like, sometimes we think that, oh, well, we just need to have more discipline then. if
Yeah.
we if we don't feel like doing it, we just have to do it anyway. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, okay, but are you just going to burn yourself out? Because I've done that. I've burnt myself
Yeah.
out so many times trying to do
Mm.
that. And so many of my clients have too. Why not actually work with what your energy is telling you
Yeah.
it needs? And, and in Ayurveda, there's also, like, very clear, there's a Ayurvedic clock that it shows that there are different times of the day that are going to be beneficial for different, um, different types of tasks and stuff, because your energy is going to wax and wane and go whichever
Mm.
which way. And there are things that you're going to be more equipped to do at different times of the day as well. So, yeah, and Ayurveda is like a roadmap, but also I really encourage my clients to tap into what is it that you works for you. What, when, if you are doing this task at this time every day and or every week, and it doesn't feel good, like, listen to that. Listen to the things that don't feel good. And not to say that, like, if something doesn't feel good, never do it, and, like, just sit
Not
back and,
paying the bills. Yeah.
but we can have some discernment. We can see, we can tell
Yes.
what's going to, like, make us feel worse in the long term. Like, I'm not going to pretend that people are, like, not smart enough to figure that part out, right? Like, you can figure out, okay, this food isn't going to make me feel that great, like, tomorrow. You can figure that kind of thing out. Um but yeah, like, really tapping into, how is it that I want to feel on a daily basis? That's going to be your best guidance system for what's next. What is your, like, what's next to do that's going to increase your energy levels when you actually go with your energy, and when you go with how it's actually feeling good to you to do that thing at that specific time.
Wow. I've learned a lot. So find your balance, automate, and then build that self-awareness and be flexible. I love your
Yeah.
holistic perspective on the science of life, as you mentioned. For people who are interested in connecting with you, where would you like them to go? And of course, we'll include links in the show notes, but what would you like them to do?
Yeah. So Instagram is where I'm, like, the most active, I would say. It's Happy Healthy Hadley. And my Hadlee is spelled with two E's at the end. It's not EY, which it usually is spelled that way. And then my website is happyhealthyhadley.com. I work with people on behavior change and Ayurveda and really, really tuning in. And it's a very holistic program, but it's really helpful for finally coming home to yourself essentially, with your health, with your fitness, with your wellness, and really optimizing your energy for whatever it is that you want to be doing. Like I don't want the world to, like, I don't my mission is not to have people thinking about their health all the time. My mission is to help people get their health down so that they can think about all of the other things that excite them, that light them up, because we need more people in the world to feel lit up. And so I want to help as many people as I possibly can optimize their energy and build their capacity, their resilience, their bandwidth to light up the rest of the world. So happyhealthyhadley.com, happyhealthyhadley on all of the socials. And then I have the quiz that I can send you as well. So you can put that in the show notes.
Awesome. Hadlee, thank you so much. What an inspiring conversation. Please do click the links in the show notes, everyone. Thanks for sticking with us. We'll see you in the next episode. Hadlee, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Brad. And thanks so much, everyone, for listening. This was fun.